more than he would have otherwise if he were treated as a junior partner.
So as we watch these images continue to unfold, you noted before not to inject a note of skepticism. However, has the North Korean regime, going back decades, have they been to this point before where they have perhaps made an initial pledge in which they have said, yes, we are willing to sit down and perhaps consider some of the demands by some of those, including in the West, and then proceeded to just essentially allow the clock to run on, for instance, an American president's administration, and only to continue with their development of their nuclear weapons program?
They certainly have. I think the best example for that is the summit in 2000, which was met with really, really high hopes. And the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, Madeleine Albright, went to Pyongyang. She met Kim Jong Un's father, Kim Jong Il, and people were quite optimistic. And then Bush took office and tensions began to simmer. Bush called Kim Jong Il a pygmy, and that didn't really bode well for ties between the two nations. But there's never... It's hard to say that this is unprecedented. Really, what's different here is the looming meeting between Kim Jong Un and Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. That's something that has never happened before, and that is something about... It's a massively important event with two very unpredictable leaders, and it could go many different directions.
And so for those people who had initially viewed President Trump's rhetoric, the bombastic fire and fury comments, for instance, when referring to North Korea, for those who were initially perhaps critical of that strategy, where do those critics find themselves now when you have a North Korean leader who says that perhaps he is open to things during these potential talks or beginnings of talks? That's, some would argue, progress. Those people who would argue the president's unpredictability is what has allowed dialogue to, at least the beginnings of dialogue, to at least start.
So I think those critics find themselves right here in my shoes. And you can't say that Trump gets credit for arranging a meeting with the North Korean leader, because North Korean leaders have wanted to meet with the American president for decades. Mm-hmm. They would have met with Obama very, very easily.
Regardless of who was in office.
Regardless. They just want to get legitimacy by meeting with an American president. So I think it's possible that Trump's strategy of maximum pressure and his bombast helped pave the way for it, but it's also possible that it just made things a lot more dangerous before, made North Korea rush to finish reaching a capability that it felt comfortable defending itself on, and puts the U.S. in a worse position than it would have otherwise.
Let's talk about the South Korean president, Moon Jae-in. What does he get out of this, what we are seeing right here at this welcoming ceremony?
I think he gets to finish, in a degree, the work that he started when he was in the administration of a former South Korean president, Kim, in 2007. He was, I believe, the chief of staff and involved in arranging a summit meeting, and now he's the one who gets to go and meet and represent the South Korean people. And I also think that it's hard to imagine a scenario of peace between North and South Korea that doesn't start with a meeting between the two leaders. And that's not to say that this meeting will lead to peace. It's impossible to say, but this really feels like it's a step in that direction. And Moon gets to say, regardless of what happens, that he helped take his country there.
Because for Koreans, both North Koreans and South Koreans, these images that we are seeing here, these are not images they have seen before, necessarily.
I haven't seen them. I mean, Kim Jong Un is different than his father. His father, Kim Jong Il, was the one who met with the South Korean president in 2000 and a different South Korean president in 2007. And unlike Kim Il-sung, the founding leader of North Korea, who ruled for 45 years, and unlike Kim Jong Un, Kim Jong-il was not a charismatic man. He was not someone who really inspired confidence. And Kim Jong-un, for all of his faults and for his severe curtail of human rights and that he is a dictator, plain and simple, is far more charismatic than his father. And is much more comfortable in front of an audience, is more of a retail politician, a la kissing babies and shaking hands than his father was. And I think that translates, and that will send a different message to South Korean viewers.
So if you are the United States, if you are President Trump watching these pictures from the demilitarized zone there, what are we watching for? What are you looking for coming out of this meeting?
So I imagine Trump is not going to be watching this himself. It's not really the kind of thing that he tends to spend time on. But I think his advisors and the people trying to profile Kim Jong Un are really just so hungry for psychological and biographical details about the man, about how he moves, what he does, how he engages. So I think there's going to be a lot of very careful analysis of just who he is as a person. He's still a very mysterious person. We know very little about him. And it's rare to get all of this footage that's not coming directly from the North Koreans.
Would a formal end to the Korean War ease tensions on other issues?
I think it certainly would ease tensions on other issues, and it would also make U.S. policy in Asia and in the world quite different, because right now Trump expends a lot of energy trying to get other countries to join him on his North Korea policy, especially with China, especially in the U.S. relationship with China. So if the two sides were able to come to a peace treaty or a peace agreement, or if after this summit between Trump and Kim, if it happens, it's still not entirely confirmed, if that would to lead to peace, I think it would make for a smoother relationship with other countries.
If you're just joining us, we are watching these pictures coming in live. A meeting set to take place at the Peace House on the southern side of the demilitarized zone that divides North and South Korea. There you see North Korean leader Kim Jong Un walking in along with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. And Isaac, as they do that, tell us about what we can expect for their agenda items here. Walk us through that.
So denuclearization is the big one. And as we mentioned, different ideas on both sides as to what actually that means, but I'll almost certainly talk about that. The other is the question of a peace treaty and how to resolve some of these historic issues of the 1950 to 1953 Korean War, which is still very, very present for North Korea. You know, North Korea likes to communicate to its citizens that they are still at war, that they're living in this very traumatic time, and that the leaders have to protect them from the Americans, the Japanese, even the South Koreans to an extent. So that's a big issue, especially on the North Korean side, but also on the South Korean side. And then the third issue, they said, is on inter-Korean relations. And that's much vaguer, but